everyone, it's Kat with the Haas Outdoors podcast. Today's episode is featuring Graham Baates, or GB Guns, as he's known on YouTube, and we're so excited to share today's episode with you.
All right, Graham, I'm so glad to have you on here with me. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Great seeing you again. It's been a few years.
It has, yeah. I definitely took a short hiatus from the outdoor industry between COVID shutting everything down and then kids' career changes. But it's good to be back.
Good to have you back. And it's not easy. It's I often when friends who ooh and ah at all the cool toys say, "Oh man, it must be the greatest thing ever." And like, it is, unless you're trying to make a living. it's a little harder.
Yeah, and you're not the only one that's already said, "Hey, welcome back to the industry." I was on the phone earlier with Liz Lazarus. She's an author, and then I've been emailing and texting with some of my other friends in the industry, and they're all like, "It's so glad to hear from you, and so good to have you back." So I'm definitely excited about coming back into the loop of things and getting back into where I was and being able to expand on that by looping in my real estate stuff, because most of that's going to be a lot of hunting land and ranches and whatnot like that. And I also have a big focus on military. My real estate brokerage that I work for has a program specifically for military, law enforcement, first responders, and I work a lot with that program.
Nice.
So, it's another way that I'm able to give back to that military community. So this is me rebranding and kind of shifting with life to come back into the fold.
I hear you. You missed some really rough years to be doing gun stuff when everything with the trigger was selling before it was even made. It was pretty hard to get hands on things, and as a gun reviewer, that meant extra tough for me. It forced me somewhat out of rifles for a while, just because of ammo prices. And I was looking at it was used to cost like $100 in ammo to review a handgun, and maybe $150, $200 for a rifle, and that went to $300 to $500 for a handgun review, and $500 plus for a rifle review. And as a journalist, not an influencer, someone who refuses money from manufacturers, I couldn't afford to do that. Like, it was just,
yeah.
And now I've built this audience that's all about handgun, and I still enjoy rifles, and I grab one of these things and say, "Hey guys, look," and they're like, "Yeah, we don't care." So, thanks, YouTube.
Well, I know you did spend a little bit of time in the military. You were in the Army, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
You want to tell us a little bit about some of what you did in the Army? I know you probably can't go into a ton of detail, which is understandable, but a little bit.
Imagine literature analysis with a grenade launcher. That's essentially it. I did what's called cryptolinguistics. It was my job to learn a foreign language, culture, weapons, tactics, techniques, procedures, capabilities, limitations, and then acquire material in said language, bring it into English. That's the linguist part. But then the crypto part was also to derive from how they were speaking, words that were used, things like that, who was superior subordinate, and then use knowledge about their weapons, tactics, et cetera, to put actual analysis on it. For example, 3rd Infantry Company, just coming up with a random thing, is tasked to move from San Diego to Santa Fe in 2 days. And I would look at it and say, okay, there's X amount of depots along the way. The maintenance records here are so. I think 3 or 4 days is a more realistic expectation, and that kind of stuff. So we called ourselves Geeks with Guns. Dictionary in one hand, machine gun or grenade launcher in the other. And although that sounds a little superlative, it was literal because we worked in very small teams, and our job was to sneak around. Sometimes we weren't sneaky enough, and the concept of us having nothing but grenade launchers or light machine guns was that when we returned fire or open fire, ideally the enemy would assume there's more people on that hill than just 3 or 4 guys. Because normally you have 1 grenade launcher, 1 light machine gun per squad. So if there's 2 light machine guns shooting, logic should say there's 2 squads up there, not 3 guys saying, "Oh, expletive," and calling for air support. So, 8 to 12 hours of sheer boredom with 10 minutes of sheer panic sprinkled in, followed by 8 to 12 hours of sheer boredom. That's pretty much. But it taught me words, and it taught me weapons. And so when I left and no longer wanted to be affiliated with the government or the military, it's like, well, how do I adapt these skills? And that turned into words about guns, and that got me writing and YouTubing and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. So a lot of where you are now, and plus, being in the military in that kind of respect gives you a whole nother understanding of firearms as well.
Oh, for sure.
You definitely know a little bit more than, say, somebody that, just walked into a range off the street and goes, "I want to learn about handguns."
Yeah, and because I got to do the world tour, Afghanistan and Iraq, I also came to appreciate how soft and squishy we humans really are, but also the reality of ballistics. Much like you're probably familiar with from the hunting world, it's amazing what pick a favorite caliber can and cannot do depending on distance and elevation and where you hit and all that kind of stuff. So there's no guarantee. As I've dove deeper into the defensive handgun world, largely because after going to 2 wars, it's like I'll be damned if some junkie is going to end my days. I've faced better enemies than a junkie. Looking at like FBI statistics, and for example, they say that it takes it's like 2.7, so round up to 3 because no one shoots partial bullets. 3 hits to incapacitate someone, regardless of caliber, and that just was so counterintuitive to all of the, if not marketing, just the lore that floats around in the gun shop about, oh yeah, you need a 10 mil and 45, kills their soul, and all that stuff. Is that the reality is like you can't guarantee shot placement because your target's moving and you're likely moving, and then short barrel equals not enough velocity, so the hollow point doesn't perform as intended. All these things that come into play. It's like, wow, I had been led to believe that a 3.8 inch 45 was the ultimate defense gun by the gun shop, and the more I researched and learned, the more I learned that like, no, that's actually less energy than a Glock 19 4-inch 9mm.
Yeah.
Because of all that kind of stuff. So learning about all that kind of stuff while trying to also not get hit by or hit anyone who doesn't deserve with said projectiles, and then trying to educate the public so people have a better understanding and can make smarter choices. Because it's so easy. I'm sure you experienced it too when you're in the industry and you get covered with all this stuff. So many toys, so many choices. To forget that, like, for most people, any one of these is a serious purchasing decision that requires months of saving, and it's likely, if not their only, one of maybe 2 purchases that they will make that year. And so I feel we media have an obligation to help people as best we can make the right decision so that what they get is what really truly fits their needs. Whether or not they understand those needs is a whole nother education challenge.
That's definitely for sure. I know that where I used to work before getting my real estate license. I worked at Buckley Air Force Base, the outdoor recreation, so like equipment rentals, stuff like that. Support squadron, basically. Air Force's version of MWR.
Yeah. Yep.
And because I came on to the team and they didn't really have a whole lot of people that knew a lot about guns and hunting and archery and stuff like that, it really opened up a whole new type of experience for some of our military members. Like we would take and meet a whole bunch of them at one of the local gun ranges and just have a day at the range.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have instructors from the range come and they would, bring a variety of firearms, but they also allowed me to bring a bunch of mine, my personal ones. And I always brought a bunch of different handguns because a lot of the people that went were husbands and wives or parents and an older child that wanted to learn how to shoot for self-defense.
Yeah.
I was like, well, if that's what you're trying to learn, you can't just go and buy the first thing you pick up. You got to try them. You got to shoot them. You got to see what's comfortable. You got to see what caliber you're comfortable with. Like I have a 380 sitting in my safe that very rarely goes anywhere because it's tiny.
Yeah.
But I don't like shooting it because every time I shoot it, no matter how I grip it, I feel like it's going to flip out of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I prefer my carry is a 9mm. It's a little bit bigger than the 380 and has the extended mag for my finger.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's not going to flip out of my hand.
Yeah.
On the flip side, there may be somebody that goes, I'm going to shoot a 45. Well, then you can try a couple of 45s and see what's comfortable for you.
Yeah.
And figure out the effective range of that. Because, someone like you or I that's been shooting handguns for a long time and is proficient at them, we might be able to hit a target a little bit further accurately than somebody that's just starting out and is only going to train a handful of times.
Yeah.
Just to stay proficient.
Yeah, and there definitely is a natural fit or lack thereof.
Yes.
The first part of the word handgun is hand, and we all have different hands. And it's I often use the analogy of cars to guns. You look in any parking lot, and outside of a few lefty cities, chances are you'll see a wide variety of car shapes, sizes, colors, makes, models, and trim levels. And all of those cars were the right choice for that person at the time based on their budget and their needs and their tastes and all that kind of stuff. I think a better analogy for handguns probably comes down to clothing. You can trying to get a pair of jeans.
Mm-hmm.
Can't just walk in and say, I need jeans and have them handed to you and they fit. It's,
Especially women's jeans. Because at least men, they're all sized by the waist and then the length. That's how the sizes are done.
Yeah.
But I can go into 4 different stores and say, I'm a size 0, I want boot cut. And no 2 pairs are going to fit the same. Some are going to be too short, some are going to be too long. Some of the waists are going to be too big. So, you can have 5 different 9mm laid out on a table in front of you. No 2 are going to shoot the same. And no 2 are going to like the same ammo either.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is part of why in my reviews I've started calling it What's for Dinner. It's become kind of a, excuse me. Sorry about that. Hit my inhaler, so now I've got sticky throat. What's for dinner is what will the gun eat? And I run through, for handguns, 10 different loads, different case materials, bullet types, overall lengths, bullet weights, all that kind of stuff, just to show will the gun eat it. And it's generally known good ammo, known good gun, but some of those combinations don't work well, or rather, some combinations work better than others, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Over the summer, this is going to sound like I'm a very lonely, bored person, but I compared 27 different 115 grain 9mm range loads, chronographed them all through the same gun, and then calculated their energy, and I found more than a 30% difference in energy from one load to the next. And for folks that don't know what that energy really translates to, it's aside from how hard the bullet hits the target, it's also how hard the gun hits your hand. It can impact recoil. And sometimes you want a softer load. Sometimes if the gun is dirty or a stiff spring or your shooting form is poor, maybe you need a little more energy to help the gun compensate for that and slug through. And I had no idea there was that big of a difference, more than 30% from, I mean, go to any gun store, 9mm 115 grain range ammo, FMJ, you grab it, you think it's all the same. But for some people, it could be the difference between the gun working or the gun not working.
Yeah, I have a 9mm sitting in my safe that I used to carry because I have holsters for it. It's the only gun I have on body holsters for. But I do not trust that firearm with my life. Because it is very particular about ammo. That ammo is not easy to find. And in order to train and be comfortable, I would want to use only the ammo that it's comfortable with.
Yeah.
And if I can't find the ammo that it's comfortable with, then I'm not going to train with that weapon. Because then I'm not comfortable with that weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are things that very few manufacturers, if any, will ever warn people about. It all comes down to the homework that we as consumers do before we buy something. And if there hasn't been anybody to say it or to test it, then there's no evidence out there. And then, of course, the other struggle, this is one of the things that inspired me to start YouTubing, was, okay, so this guy's got a channel and he's got X amount of subscribers or viewers, but what are his credentials? Why should I be listening to this guy? Popularity, I think a couple of recent elections have shown us popularity doesn't necessarily mean qualified.
Yes.
So it's a scary thing. I don't think there's anything else in our daily lives that is so requires so much knowledge and research to do well, and yet doesn't have quality like resources. Like even, you're on a road trip and you find a random gas station you've never seen before. Chances are it's still going to be fine. It might be a little dirty, but your car is still going to run. At a restaurant, and what they're offering is not anything you've tried before. Chances are it's still going to be decent, at least prepared to a certain standard. And it's weird because we have SAMI and we have regulations and things to help protect consumers when it comes to firearms, but it's almost like the extreme ends, the parameters of what is acceptable can still equal not working.
Yes.
Ammo that's on this end and a gun that's on this end still won't run well. And that's scary because unlike gas for your car, or I guess food could be deadly, but unlike getting gas for your car, like what you feed your gun on a hunt can result in you making an ethical kill or not, hitting the target or not. And in self-defense, it might come down to who goes home that night.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree on that one. It's crazy. I mean, I even have a rifle that it only likes 130 grain. It's a 270. It only likes 130 grain for shots under 300 yards.
Yeah.
If you want to take a shot further than 300 yards, it still has to be 130 grain, but it has to be a different bullet.
I can see that. That's
So it likes one particular ammo for shots under 300,
yeah,
and it likes a different ammo for shots over 300.
yeah. No, I believe that. It's I've done, I don't know, a couple dozen AR reviews, and I have a similar what's for dinner thing, but it's for accuracy, and it's 10 shot groups of 5 loads. Usually it's 2 shooters. Each of us takes 5 shots of each load into the same target. So you get it looks like a mess, but it is 2 people and 10 rounds. It gives you a pretty good idea of how that rifle is going to do with that ammo. But what I found is like the twist rate suggestions, that are all over the internet that have these guides of if it's 1 in 7 twist, you want this bullet weight, and if it's 1 in 8 twist, you want this bullet weight for 5.56. That's not as important as the quality of the barrel and the quality of the ammo.
Yeah.
I did a 0.3 by 0.5 inch 10 shot group with the wrong ammo, according to that chart. And if I ever have to shoot a group again with that gun, I'm using that same ammo. Like, sorry, internet, I don't care about your chart. I've seen what this thing can do.
Yeah. And I think that's also part of our job as journalists, as writers, as YouTubers, influencers, whatever you want to call us, is that you never, a lot of influencers, you never see the bad.
Mm-hmm.
You never see products that they review that weren't good. You never hear what they really think about something. I feel like we owe that to the everyday consumer to, really sit down and go, yeah, this gun double feeds, or it jams all the time, or it doesn't kick out the spent casing. I literally sent a rifle back because I could not get it to function on the range. I had a gunsmith look at it. They couldn't figure out what was wrong. I finally got it sort of kind of functioning, took it out on a hunt, and it jammed after, like, it missed the animal and then it jammed. So, like, I sent it back I reached out to the company. I was like, hey, look, like, all these things happened. I had pictures of all the casings that were damaged.
Mm-hmm.
I had pictures of bullets being like factory loads bent in the casings because it jammed in whatever way. And I was like, look, I can write the review, but it's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be a positive review.
So I personally have mixed feelings on how to handle that. Great example, and I said it in the video. Bull Armory is a friend of mine. I carried this little guy, their little 3 1/4 inch double stack 1911 all summer. Carried the 4 1/4 inch all winter. I reviewed 6 of their guns, all of them spectacular. They sent me one that had issues. Fixable. Like, I knew what to do, but as a journalist, as soon as I tinker, as soon as I pop the hood, I'm no longer reviewing what the consumer experience is. So I sent it back to him. Came back a few weeks later, same issue. Sent it back. Came back a few weeks later, different issue. Sent it back to him a third time, and I was like, "Hey, we're 5 for 6 on outstanding and 1 for 6 on terrible. What's going on here?" And they said, "Hey, it's our policy. If it comes back 3 times, we replace it." They did. I got a different serial number back the next time. Gun was fine. I waited until everything was done so that I had that complete story, and then told folks. And I do that because I think a negative review, if not done properly, and back to the whole, like, there's a lot of people out there who really don't have the qualifications or the knowledge or the troubleshooting skills to be reviewing things in the first place.
Mhm.
But if I just said, "Oh, this gun sucks," that doesn't help the company, and it doesn't necessarily help consumers. Whereas now, the company has identified something, they can change it, everybody wins. But another feeling I have, and this goes into my own protocol, like I turn the camera on before I take my first shot in a review, so that it's all captured. It makes for boring videos, as you can tell by my subscriber count, but the guys that roll in the fun action music and jump cut flash 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 of the thing looking awesome, we don't know, like you said, we don't know what else happened there. Like, is this a
Mhm.
highlight reel? And then when those same guys do a negative review, like, is it really that bad? Or did you shoot it for a month and splice together 10 minutes of footage of issues that, oh, by the way, you seem to have failed to mention what ammo you were using, or of course, with your finger over the ejection port, it's got ejection issues. Like there's, um,
Yeah.
so it, I see, and it, part of me says whatever YouTube and the internet is largely entertainment. If people don't have the intelligence to see past that, then they're buying at their own risk. The other part of me gets really irritated, and this is where I set the difference between a journalist and an influencer. Is an influencer shows you something, wanting you to come to a conclusion. A journalist just provides you record of the experience.
Mhm.
And I think there are a whole lot of influencers out there, and there are very few journalists.
Yeah. No, I agree. So you talked a little bit about how you got into journaling and how you got into kind of doing YouTube. What are some of the best experiences you've had? Are there any that really stood out to you?
I mean, overall, it's getting to have a bedroom converted to look like this now. um, Stuff that pre getting into this, I probably wouldn't have even known existed, let alone wanted or been able to try or even touch. I now have hanging on my wall, and I can go hit the range after work and go enjoy it. That aspect of it, I love. And the other aspect is when a viewer or reader lets me know that I really helped them with something, that they learned something, they were able to buy the right thing for themselves or not buy the wrong thing for themselves because of information I put out there.
Mhm.
I think that's awesome, especially going back on the more defensive nature of it all. To me, that's important. Like, I don't have soldiers anymore, and I certainly don't consider my audience my soldiers, but I do feel a responsibility to them, sort of like a parent. I'm their gun dad. Um, and so it means a lot when I can help them out somehow, I guess.
Mhm. Have you ever thought about shooting handguns competitively?
I actually used to. Um, it ironically was the start of the YouTube channel, way back, and just for posterity's sake, it's still on the channel. If anyone can scroll 1,400 videos back, I used a 3-gun and loved it to an extent, but it was freaking expensive.
Mhm.
And this was 2012, 2013. So ammo was still dirt cheap and plentiful and all that, but it was still more than I could afford at the rate that I was shooting. And I'll never forget a guy rolled up in like a little beater Geo Metro and then pulls out this STI, pre-staccato, beautiful, fancy double stack 1911. Looking at him, and he's got holy t-shirts, and you can tell he's not rolling in the dough, but he's got this $2,500 handgun, and then he pulls out this $3,500 rifle setup and $2,000 shotgun setup, and I'm like, wow, either this guy's priorities are way off in left field, or something's up. And I asked him, and he says, "Oh yeah, no, I can't afford this stuff. They sent it to me." And I was just mind blown. Like, what do you mean they sent it to you? I was like, how does that happen? And he says, oh yeah, I just started filming my matches and I put them up on YouTube, and the company saw them and they wanted me to shoot their stuff, so they sent it. Um, and I was like, oh, well, shit, I need to start a YouTube channel. So I got some, 720p action cams and $70 video software and total nickel budget setup, and started filming my own matches and put it out there. And then I waited, and I kept waiting. I wasn't going to get any sponsors. So as I go to watch, these are the channels, I'm like, how are these guys getting sponsors? Like, what is the trick? Because some of them I beat in matches. I was like, where's my free gun? And that got me digging deeper into the gun tuber world.
Mhm.
And I saw some entertaining stuff that was fun, and I saw some cool dream guns that I'd love to shoot one day. And then I saw a lot of just bad information.
Mhm.
Not malicious of those channels at all. Like, they weren't trying to put out bad information. They themselves didn't know any better. And turning on a camera, they're like, I'm the expert now, and started propagating lore effectively. And so that kind of tweaked. Like, one of my first videos was on sight radius, because I was running AKs, and everybody always talked about, and this is old Vietnam lore, that the sight radius of the AK is short, and that's why it's hard to be accurate with it, whereas the M16 has a longer sight radius. And so in this very advanced video, I laid an AK and an AR on my floor at tape measure, and guess what? The AK sight radius is equal to or longer than the sight radius on an M4. It was a misunderstanding of the concept. And so I did videos like that, and it's sort of a like FUD buster, myth buster kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I quickly learned not many people like to be told they're wrong. So I had to find softer, gentler ways to dispel these myths than to make a video specifically about how wrong they are. Same thing with the Saiga guns out of Russia.
Mhm.
Saiga is how it's pronounced. It's an animal, and anyone listening, I suggest they Google image search Saiga, Saiga. It is a goofy space antelope that lives in the Caucasus Mountains. Has this funky nose on it. That's what it's named after. And everybody would say Sega. And I was a Russian linguist. Russian was one of my languages in the service. That's how I knew it was Saiga. And it just kind of irked me. So I did this whole video about the Saiga, what it is and why it's named after, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember including a clip of Jim Fuller, the legend himself, saying Sega. And it was sort of like a, ha, Jim, you're wrong. Total wrong attitude. But, I was a angry punk veteran. He was still in the army at the time. So I was like, oh, you're up on the pedestal. Let me pull you down. Kind of thing. So yeah, I quit doing videos like that and just like, let me just show people guns instead. Because I'm
Yeah.
not a know-it-all, but it was coming off as a know-it-all kind of thing. Making a lot of enemies too.
Yeah, that doesn't really work too well in the outdoor industry. You're not supposed to make enemies. You're supposed to be nice to people.
Yes. And one thing that I'm sure you've seen as well, and I learned really quickly, is it's a really small industry. Like, I swear, SHOT Show, which is the biggest show in our country for it, every year is just a family reunion, and you just walk around and see who's wearing what polo that year, because people stay in the industry. They just work for a different company the next year.
Yep, like with with the Remington splitting up and selling off all their little companies. They owned Marlin. Well, Ruger owns Marlin now, and I have friends that worked for Marlin at Remington, and I saw pictures and video clips of the Ruger booth with Marlin, and there's my buddy standing there next to the person, doing the video. He's still with Marlin, but he's now Marlin with Ruger.
went from wearing a green shirt to a red shirt. You know.
Yep. So I think he was wearing a black or it might have been white. I'm not sure. But no, I miss SHOT Show. I really do. It's like you said, it's like a family reunion. You know, my first SHOT Show, I am a natural introvert. I don't know if you knew that. I'm a natural introvert. It takes a lot to drag me out of my shell to do stuff like going to trade shows.
Yeah.
So my first SHOT Show, I really did not want to go talk to anybody. I just not new people. I would go talk to the people I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to go talk to new people. And Wes would literally drag me into booths to go talk to people.
Yeah.
And then the next year, I think it was the next year, he wasn't able to go because he was in basic. But the next year, a friend of mine went, and she is a natural extrovert. And she's known me since high school. We've known each other since the first day of my freshman year of high school. That's how long we've known each other. So we get to SHOT Show. She came with me to be my photographer. We get to SHOT Show, and we're walking down the aisles, and I'd see somebody I'd know and be like, oh, hey, give me a second. I got to go say hi to whoever it is. And she told me later, she was like, who are you and what have you done with Kat? Because the Kat I knew would never just be walking down the hallway and go, oh, hang on a second. I got to go say hi to so-and-so, or hey, I got to go check out this gun, and I got to meet these new people, and I set up this meeting with so-and-so. She's like, who are you and what have you done with Kat?
That's awesome, though. Yeah, it kind of tying shows and military service and life in the industry all together. After those two wars, surprise, surprise, I have some sensitivities to me, a little bit of PTSD, and so I don't like crowds, bright lights, lots of noises, or things being out of my control, which is SHOT Show all rolled into one. And
it's
ironically,
everything rolled into a week.
Ironically, a lot of what got me into shooting so much was while I was still learning to deal with all that stuff and fresh back from my second deployment, I'd go shoot in the mountains on the weekends. And I got out of the intelligence community to do a tour in recruiting to take a break from the nastiness of intel. And it was just kind of a stress relief. Plus, I wanted to stay ready to go into the next fight. And Army recruiting shamefully disregards a lot of training standards on anything soldiering because it's all about just recruiting. And that I felt was going to make me weak and a liability. And so still hitting the woods, still training as much as I could, / enjoying. So every Saturday I'd go up sometimes with some buddies and burn a case of ammo because back then it was affordable to do that. And what I noticed was after a day of shooting in the woods, I'd come back and have the best naps. And it sounds funny, but I didn't sleep well at the time, period. But I was out, a restful, true, great sleep after a day of shooting. And it took me a while to process it. And what I figured out was that's because shooting is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
To land a good shot, you got to take complete control of your mind, your body, breathing, aware of your environment, aware of absorbing in everything and controlling what you can and concentrating. And maybe it's only for a couple seconds, but that's each shot. Multiply that times a few hundred shots, and you've actually had a pretty long meditation session.
Mm-hmm.
And I was finding peace through controlled explosions with potentially lethal consequences. Which is what shooting is.
That's such an Army thing to say.
I was getting my peace out of it, and it really became therapeutic for me. And as a result of all that shooting and all that stuff, I became a decent shot at it, and that of course propels me into the industry and doing what I do now. So this thing that causes me peace, of course I'm much calmer and better now, but this thing that was bringing me the peace was forcing me to go to SHOT Show and be in this bright, noisy, crowded chaos for 1 week a year. And that's like, what kind of like army feeling thing is this? Like, oh, this helps you? Let me give you the opposite. So
Yeah, no, SHOT Show is everything is out of your control. Nothing goes right. Everyone's running behind for the next meeting.
yeah, it has
Bright lights, a lot of people.
yeah, the COVID years were kind of fun though, especially because the big corporations pulled out. You know, they've got liability to shareholders and everything, and so the companies that used to have these 3 football field size booths were vacant and couldn't be filled. And so I don't know if was that the 21 or 22? Did you go to that year?
No, I haven't been since 2020.
Oh, it was. So you remember the size of Vista and the size of Ruger and
Yes.
imagine those just not being there. It
God.
was you literally could have played football on the show floor. there was
Well, because
or
if I remember correctly, like Vista, Ruger, and like Winchester Browning were all fairly close to each other.
yeah.
And Winchester Browning always had like a massive booth.
And Sig, Sig stopped doing
Yeah.
shop together. So they all pulled out and there was just this big hole in the middle of the show. But it was kind of nice because the only people who showed up really needed to be there. Like anyone, especially before, I don't want to get too political on the whole control virus thing, as if that didn't just tip my hat. But the point being, before we knew what hazards were really going to be like and if this stuff was really that awful or not, a lot of people rightfully made the choice for their families and their own livelihood to not attend events like that. And so it was a ghost town. But as a result, great conversations because nobody was in a rush. The appointments weren't booked and you could freely walk from one end of the show to the other in like 5 minutes instead of half an hour. It was it was
It
amazing.
wasn't when you're trying to leave the show and you're like, oh, I got to go the opposite direction of where everyone else is going.
Yeah. But this year it was back up to, they say biggest ever, and they also say 55,000 people. But I remember 17 or 18 had 80,000 people. So either those numbers were flubbed or something is off. But anyways, it was a busy year with the extension into Caesars, basically adding another 20 or 30% of floor space, stretching that crowd out. It's still been pretty nice. So it was a good year. My bummer is my birthday is always, well, it's the end of January, and so the SHOT Show crud that you catch every time you go has me always sick on my birthday. Once again, back to the whole, oh, you love this thing? Let me make it suck for you.
Yeah, no, there have been a couple of times where SHOT Show has fallen on or around my birthday because I'm in the middle of January.
Oh yeah.
And I've already looked at the dates for next year because I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to attend next year. And the industry day at the range falls on my daughter's birthday. So now I got to make a choice.
Yeah.
Like, am I here in the morning for her birthday? And then I leave that evening and I just miss industry day. Like, but
And
industry day is always so windy
and cold and rainy.
Yeah.
That's another one that as a journalist, I've felt myself changing my opinion of industry day at the range. I think my first one was 17, and back then it was like going to a theme park as far as waiting in line for half an hour to get
for a 5-round magazine.
Yeah, for 5 rounds, and no real straight answers from people who are just hired to shove mags in guns or to stuff mags. They don't know anything about the product. They're just like, here, shoot it. So you can't get any information out of them. You don't know if that ammo is cherry picked to make the gun shoot softer or make sure the gun runs and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of lost interest for a while. The change has come in that now the lines are at most 5 minutes. And there are a lot of companies who are doing industry day at the range who are not on the show floor. Just because the show has become so expensive. I don't think a lot of folks realize that for some of those companies, it's a 6-figure expense. Some of those booths are approaching 6 figures and are only used that 1 week, and then they're stored the rest of the year to be brought out the next year.
And that's if they don't change the booth for next year.
Yeah, God forbid they have new products, and then need to change the displays. So Industry Day of the Range to me is back to worth it. However, I do it by being on the first bus out there and the first bus back, because coming from Oregon where we have moisture, going to Nevada and getting wind blasted all day before 4 days of hotel air, just like it turns me into a raisin. And I think that's part of how I get sick, is I just get so dehydrated at range day followed by the show, and it just nails me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use a Camelback bladder next time to keep hydrated.
It's smart. I mean, I walk around with a water bottle, and it's
I've
ridiculous.
done that too, but I emptied the damn thing, and then I got to find somewhere to fill it, and that means I got to leave where I am to go find somewhere to fill it. If I have a 2-liter bladder on my back,
True.
I'm good for a while.
That should last you. Yeah.
Have there been any products at this past SHOT Show that you are thinking you're going to try and get for reviews that we should be looking for?
Yes. I don't want to name them yet because I've come to learn that for example, I've reviewed 400 handguns. So at this point, it's like, if your handgun is not on my channel, what's wrong with your handgun? But the thing that I kind of blame us journalists for doing is people forget SHOT Show is an industry show. It's not a consumer show. And quite often products are shown, I think, my theory, to see if they gather the orders. Are dealers and distributors going to order this thing? And if they don't, the company decides they're not going to make it. Or maybe the thing is 80% complete, but before they spend that other 20%, they want to see if it's going to get orders, if it's going to get attention. And so I think what happens is media goes in there hungry for clicks and gets excited about something super cool and makes a big deal about it. And then when that thing ends up not getting made or not coming to market for a few months or a few years, Caracol, I waited 6 years for this gun. That they get upset, or the thing gets forgotten, and then when it finally comes out, like, this was the hotness 6 years ago. People were super stoked about this thing, and I got one, did a review on it, and it has not drawn the audience that I expected, because I think the people who were excited stopped being excited like 5 years ago. So with that in mind, I did some coverage on my teeny tiny website, gbgunsdepot.com, of stuff that I thought was neat, that I also got confirmation from the company is like, it's a thing. It exists. It's not just to show off. I mean, heck, Palmetto Armory this year showed off all kinds of stuff, and they were smart. This time they told people, they said, hey, look, we're looking to hear from you guys. What do you want to see? And they're sort of waiting to see where the noise is, and they'll make whatever people are making noise about. But PSA can afford to do that because they're a massive company with a big retail arm to keep the lights on. They're not a gun manufacturer, waiting for orders. So, yeah, so I guess in that sense, long answer short, yes, but I'm being tight-lipped. Okay, I'll give one, just because it's right in front of me. I love this room. The Archon Type B was another amazing, cool, different handgun that came out a few years ago and then disappeared, and then it came back and then it disappeared. Well, now it's supposedly back again. uh, in a new version that's updated that addresses some of the things that people didn't like about those early ones. So I'm headed to the IWA Classics, sort of the SHOT Show of Europe, at the end of February, and we'll be meeting with those guys once more to get more details on it. That's not a guarantee that their U.S. importer is going to send me one to review, or that I can necessarily afford one if they don't send me one. But it is on my radar. So pressure's on you, PTR.
I'm going to guess that you have an FFL for yourself. Like you have your own. No?
No. In fact, the ATF local office tried to force me to get one. Believe it or not. They audited the local shop and found a stack of 4473s with my name on it and said, why does this guy have 200 handguns? Shop let me know, so I called the office and was like, hey, just so you know, I'm here to answer any questions you have. And yeah, they said you received so many firearms that you should have an FFL. And I said, is that the law? And they said, well, no. And they said, well, what do you do with them when you're done? And I said, well, some of them I keep for future use. Some of them I send back. Like, what do you mean send back? It's like, to the manufacturer. Well, how do you do that? UPS or FedEx? Well, what's the record of that? So I'm not obligated to keep record. Well, you need to keep better records. Like, why? I'm not an FFL. And this went on for about 2 months of them saying I really needed to get an FFL. And as a private citizen, I looked at an FFL as a legal obligation, me having to have records of things, and an error in those records could put me in jail. Whereas without one, I don't have to keep those same records. And then also inviting the ATF to my house, which I have no interest in.
No, I agree with that.
I don't have a dog, but I do have cats. And while cats are more nimble than dogs, they may not dodge 5.56. So I don't want the ATF in my house. So I eventually came to an agreement with the local field office by pointing out to them the law, and that is an FFL is for someone in the business of firearms. And I pointed out to them that I don't make a penny off of guns. Like, I have been paid for my words about guns, but you don't go after a fantasy book author for their treatment of dragons because they don't have dragons, or you don't go after a crime novelist for murders that are in the book. And for the same reason, you can't go after a gun writer or gun tuber because they have guns. That's not not legal. So that quieted them up, and they've left me alone ever since. I hope it stays that way. I hope if they do feel the need to interact, that they're courteous, because it's again semi-sensitive veteran who's also well equipped. I don't want things to. I don't want the wrong people to get hurt for silly reasons.
No, of course not. No. Well, Graham, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with me, and it's been good catching up with you. I know it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, are you going to NRA?
I'll have to figure out when that is because I haven't looked into it yet.
17th of May in Texas.
Oh, not sure how I'm going to pull that off because I'm going to be in Oklahoma the 2nd through the 6th of May.
Oh, that's just one state up.
I know, but I got to make sure that the kiddos are covered and
Yeah.
But I'll look into it. We'll see what we can do about it.
That's always a fun show. I enjoy that one because there's real people there. It's not just the industry circle.
It's like a very calmed down version of SHOT Show, but with consumers.
Yeah, yeah, and who sometimes make for good people watching.
Oh yeah.
Not to sound judgmental, but there may or may not be a bingo card that floats around for us to people watch and find certain characters in the crowd.
Oh yeah, no, when I would go to the Great American Show in Harrisburg, I have people watched all the time. And it was even better, like, I'd be in one of the booths or something with a company that I, did reviews for or worked for or whatever, and people would come up to the booth and be like, "Oh my god, I've been following your page for forever." And so it was kind of neat to, like, face to face
Yeah,
with some of those people. So you get that at some of those bigger consumer shows.
and with Wayne gone now, or allegedly leaving, hopefully we can see a revitalization of the
Mhm.
NRA. I hope so, but who knows? Even if he's gone, his cronies have to be gone too for any real change to happen. So
Mhm.
we'll see. But anyways, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely was. And we'll have to catch up again soon.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Another huge thank you to Graham for joining me today. And if you all want to hear more content like this, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great night and we'll chat soon.